I don't know if I could talk to enough manufactured housing owners and people to learn enough about it, because it's a very nuanced asset in and of itself. And then multifamily as well, that's a whole nother beast.
The majority of people trade time for money in the hopes of building wealth. I'm here to tell you that the traditional methods don't cut it anymore. Welcome to the Passive Income Power Podcast. My name is Doug Earthman. My partner Mickey Bernstein and I are going to dive deep into the power that passive income can have on your quality of life. We're going to discuss alternative assets, strategies, and insights through interviews with the very people who have found freedom through their power. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Passive Income Power Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Passive Income Power Podcast. My name is Doug Earthman.
And I'm Mickey Bernstein.
And we've got Colin Knight here today with Hope Brothers Investments. Super excited about this episode. Colin and I went to Ole Miss together, and we actually played on the ice hockey team at Ole Miss. I didn't do a whole lot of playing, but I was on the team and I had a jersey. Colin, on the other hand, helped found the team. And while at Ole Miss, I'll go through your list of educational accomplishments. Colin got his undergraduate degree in accounting, then a master's of accounting, then an MBA, then a master's in secondary education. Were some of those at the same time, or did they? Was it one after another? Were you just in school for 10 years?
It was all concurrent at Ole Miss. You know how it goes at Ole Miss. You just never want to leave.
Well, and then after that, you spent time in the Navy, correct?
Yep.
And worked for the Cleveland Indians, the Nashville Predators, then taught middle school math, and then went back to school for one last round and got your Master's of Real Estate at Texas A&M. Currently, you work for Hope Brothers Investments, which is self-storage, mobile home park, and multifamily full-service real estate investment group and brokerage. Did I leave anything out? Is there anything you can add to that?
No, you pretty much hit it on the head there. So
awesome. Well, tell us your story from where you grew up. You know, I covered some of the college and post-college, and then where you are now.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say thank you for having me on, and appreciate the time that you two are putting into this. So watched a bunch of episodes, and it's been great so far. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my background, I grew up a military brat. My dad was in the Navy, so I moved all up and down the East Coast. After that, we settled in Mississippi. That's where I ended up going to school for so many years. Did my undergrad, and then honestly, it was starting the hockey team was what kind of kept me there. Had a graduate assistantship, was able to keep just doing degrees, and luckily didn't have to pay for any of them, was getting paid to go. So that was really a good catalyst for it. But honestly, the hockey team has been a real effect on my life, and keeping that going and helping out where I can. So after that, it was going to work for the Cleveland Indians and Nashville Predators, both in sales. Throughout that time, I always wanted to join the Navy, and I put applications in, and really what it came down to is I had some bad vision, and they wouldn't let me in at first. And so, as they say, just keep at it. And after about seven applications across the years, I finally got accepted in. And so went in, joined the Navy, was in the Navy active duty for 6 years. After I got out of the Navy, ended up doing civilian work, doing the same job that I was doing. At that point, we were kind of going through the transition of COVID. My wife was trying to figure out where her job was going to take her next. And our deal was always that after the Navy, I took a Southern girl from Mississippi up to the north to Alexandria, Virginia. She got to pick where to go next. And so her job took us down here to Texas. And I made some calls, talked to some buddies from my MBA program. Real estate was what I thought I wanted to do. And so started looking around for another degree to do, and used that GI Bill, and again went back and got another degree paid for, but really made a ton of connections with Texas A&M. Ole Miss has a great network, but honestly, the Aggie network is massive here in Texas and honestly nationwide. And so Came back, did that, and that's how I got connected with Charlie and the group here. So
That's awesome. So, are you still able to play any hockey?
oh yeah, still playing men's league. I mean, that's what even after I got out, wherever I moved, I'd jump on a men's league team, and it's a lot of times it's beer league. You get together, and it's about getting together after. But the athletic part of it is just a perk. So I still play. Got a couple teams here in Dallas. Actually, got back from played a tournament in Vegas with guys here in Dallas, and then this past weekend I played in a hockey tournament down in Houston with a bunch of guys from Ole Miss. So still keeping it going, still staying in contact. And I mean, a lot of the guys still get together. We try to get together once a year and get on the ice together. So we did it this past year in Athens, Georgia, after Ole Miss. During the weekend, Ole Miss was playing Georgia. They had an outdoor rink in Athens, which was pretty awesome. And so they invited the alumni in, and we skated against their alumni team as well. So any excuse to get on the ice, I'll take it.
That's awesome. It has been far too long for me since I've been on the ice, probably couple years after college was the last time I skated. I still have friends that are active in the men's league in Memphis, but at some point, maybe I'll be able to get back on the ice. We'll see. Yeah. Are you still plugged in to the Ole Miss hockey team and helping out with that at all?
Yeah, as much as I can. We're technically part of the executive board. The founders are, so any kind of big decisions, coaching changes, or any major investments, we still kind of help with them. We get back and do some alumni events every year, trying to engage the alumni base and continue to fund the team, help the kids out. Obviously, the being a club team, it's player funded. University helps a little bit, but it's mainly player funded. So as the alumni base, we try to tap into that and continue to provide resources there. So our goal this year is we're going back and we're going to support them in running their Hell Week leading up right after tryouts to kind of get them moving and start the season off right. So a couple of us are going back to run that for the coaches so they can step back for a week and we can be the bad guys.
We all like sports, and I'm going to throw in my own little sports story real quick, and then I want to ask you about triathlons. But I have these two twin grandsons that play competitive baseball, and they just graduated from high school, but they didn't go to their graduation because they went straight to summer league to live with a family in Illinois. And my wife just stuck her head in there to tell me that one of them just hit a home run his first time up to bat in this elite league with college players. And so that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Her eyes were wide open. She's pretty excited. Anyway, so tell me, I ran marathons. Doug's done triathlons, but tell us about your triathlon and how that went.
It went better than I expected. You kind of go into it not really knowing what to expect. I hadn't done a full triathlon, the Olympic length, ever. I'd done a bunch of sprints back in high school, so it'd been over a decade since I'd done one. And this past year I got into biking a little bit more. I'd always been a swimmer and runner, and so I was like, well, let's do something to keep me in shape this year. And so I decided to sign up for the Olympic, and it was fun. It was a really good time. You have got a lot of build up going into it, as I'm sure Doug knows. And in the end, it was coming down the run. I mean, I didn't push myself, I'll admit, too hard, but the guy running the other way, I was cheering him on. He goes, "Man, you're having a little too much fun for doing this." But so it was fun. It was a good time, and I look forward to doing another in October, running the same course and just run it back and try to beat my score. So
it's a lot of fun. I can't wait to get back into it. I've been on a drought with that as well. So one of these days. So after you got done with your degree and your master's in real estate, how'd you get plugged in with the Hope Brothers?
Yeah, so like I said, the tapping into the Aggie network was huge. There is a big reason why I went back to get another degree. I mean, I probably didn't need to in order to get into it, but it's so much networking, and all my contacts were in the defense industry at the time. So went back. I was actually going to be an appraiser, and it worked for a great group, Valbridge Property Advisors, out of Dallas. Had a lot of fun with them, and honestly, I enjoyed the work. But in the end, Charlie approached me, just cold called me one night. I was actually coming back from A&M in a rainstorm, and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, saw you're in the program, like your background, I'm prior military. Would you be interested in talking about brokerage?" And I really didn't want to do brokerage at the time. I appraiser route was where I wanted to go. I had done my research beforehand. I mean, I had signed my letter of intent to go work for him. And so, but always take a meeting. So I took a meeting with Charlie. We met up here in Weatherford, grabbed breakfast, and he just kind of explained to me what he did. And all the stars kind of aligned there. Charlie, prior military, his wife was a physical therapist. My wife was a physical therapist. His wife was, I think, 8 months pregnant at the time. My wife was 6 months pregnant at the time. And so everything was kind of lining up and speaking. I was like, maybe this is a sign that I should kind of take this leap. And one of my professors at A&M had kind of pushed me to say, sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes there's signs. I mean, you never know what what larger beings. I mean, I thank God every day for everything that he's put in front of me. And so that's been something that I just kind of listened and said, maybe I take this leap. And so it all worked out. I mean, I got hooked up with him, and it's all been good so far. It's actually, I think it was a year next week is when my 1 year of working there. So.
Wow. Give us a little story about how Charlie formed the Hope Brothers Investments.
Yeah. So he was prior Air Force, like I mentioned. He got medically separated out of the Air Force, and he knew he wanted to get into real estate. So kind of getting out early of the Air Force, it kind of forced him to kind of speed up his plan on getting into it. And so he actually went and did his master's of real estate at MIT, got into doing self-storage because one of his mentors there talked to him about the asset class. And so he just really got interested in it, and he actually wrote his dissertation on that. And so after the fact, he went off, worked for another company, a larger company, ended up not really enjoying the larger company feel. And so he just said, I'm going to go do it on my own. And so started it himself from scratch, started here in northern Texas. And so where we're based out of is Texas, Oklahoma, and now we're every state touching it around it. So Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. And so his start was just, he knew he wanted to get into the storage asset, being such a great asset. And we've started off in this central U.S. area. He was in the Texas, Oklahoma area. And now as we've expanded, it's getting around it. And our business model has just grown. And we found success in those other markets. So,
well, our company, 2D Investments, has really been anxious to be able to offer our investors opportunities in self-storage. And we just hadn't found the right operator yet. But right now, we got an authentic expert right in front of us. So tell us about the recession resistance of storage, and tell us why this is a good investment in uncertain times.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of people, you'll see a lot of people talk about it, whether it's recession proof or recession resistant. We like the resistant part is definitely the piece to emphasize. There's nothing actually recession proof. So that was, a lot of people will kind of argue that side of it. But so kind of what we see puts it there is that generally self-storage is individual consumers. There's another piece to it that has been growing, but obviously storage is just a temporary location for people to store. And so where we find storage meeting people is in life transition. So whether it's changing jobs, family statuses, downsizing, or increasing household sizes. And so in both boom and bust cycles, we see those things happening depending on what it is that each individual is experiencing. In economic upturns, people are moving bigger houses, they're accumulating more stuff, buying RVs, buying toys, whatever it might be, having kids and having to put other heirlooms away. In downturns, you see the exact opposite. People having to move to smaller houses, people having to downsize their house and kind of declutter things. And so we see it in both sides of the economic cycles that people need storage. And honestly, the only time that we kind of are sitting on our hands is when people are like, uh-oh, we don't know what's going on. We're going to just wait. And we've seen that a couple times. The beginning of COVID, nothing was happening. Honestly, November to February of this past year, a lot of people were kind of sitting on their hands saying, we don't know what's happening with interest rates. Houses sales kind of decreased a little bit, and movement of people decreased. In those months, we see it more than in the summer, fall, and spring. But that's really the times that we see storage kind of slow down, is when people don't know, have uncertainty. But when things are ramping up and when things are going bad, we see it working really well. And so the other piece of it is that storage is so sticky that once people get into a storage unit, a lot of times it's auto pay. They just it's like the Netflix subscription. They put it in there, they put stuff in there, and they just kind of forget about it they keep rotating things in and out, or they say, well, it's just $50 a month, $100 a month. People are willing to kind of have that freedom of where to put things away. And so it's just so sticky that we do find that people will sometimes just forget about it. And so that's a great part about it. The two other pieces of it is one of the sad factors of what drives self-storage a lot of times is natural disasters. And we see it in our southern states of Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma with tornadoes, that when natural disasters occur, the need for storage increases. And so we see a lot of times that stability in storage is typically in the low 90s, that we've seen places go 100% for years on end. I was just talking with a gentleman in Louisiana that his facility had been 100% full for 3.5 years because of the hurricanes that had come through there. And so natural disasters is another thing that in some aspects does occur in both booms busts, but in economic downturns, when that happens in certain areas, storage is needed even more in those times.
Don't really ever think about that aspect of it, natural disasters. You'd mentioned between November and February of this past year that people were on hold with, I guess that was mostly on the brokerage side with the purchases and sales. What are you seeing currently with the current environment? Because it seems like that was early compared to a lot of people are sitting on their hands still in other asset classes. And it sounds like that's broken loose and people are transacting.
During that time, both sales and purchasing was low. I would say that on the sales side, it was sellers had these expectations. The last 3 years, we had just been seeing a ramp up that everyone was trying to capitalize on. And so sellers were sitting here saying, hey, I could sell my property for a 3, 4, 5 cap, depending on the market. And obviously as rates creeped up, sellers are saying, hey, I still want to get that amount. And buyers are saying, I can't make it pencil. So on the buy side, they're sitting here saying, I can't make it pencil where the rates are. And two, what the Fed was doing, increasing so fast over a 90-day period of going under contract to close. You're talking over some 90-day periods, the interest rates went up 150 basis points. And so they couldn't even put their finger on, say, this is the interest rate that I'm going to be able to go get with a bank. And so that's why it was on their side kind of settled. It was also on the consumer side as well, because consumers were saying, we're going to sit here on our hands for a little bit. I mean, it was coming out of COVID. Who knows where kind of all that was. Still, people were seeing record unemployment low numbers. And so people were still making money somehow, and they didn't really need to move a ton. So they were able to sit on their hands and be pretty comfortable. So, I mean, where the market is right now, we're seeing it kind of ramp back up. Things are moving again. We've been able to, I want to say we've had 6 closings this year so far, and we have another 5 under contract. And so the things that are kind of closing that gap and where the market is, one is that sellers' expectations are definitely coming back to earth. They're kind of realizing that, hey, the market was really good back in 2020, 2021, and early 22. And maybe I missed the boat a little bit, but we're seeing buyers come to the table and still willing to pay pretty top dollar for where all the other assets are kind of trading at this time.
So is there different pockets in the U.S. where self-storage is, I guess, hotter and colder, or is it just pretty steady everywhere?
It's pretty steady across the board. People are willing to buy in rural tertiary markets, and I mean, there's a buyer for everything is what we always say. And so, I mean, there's hot markets out there, North Carolina, Florida, California, Colorado, and then Texas as a whole are markets that people want to get into. But really, in the end, it really just depends on the buyer. Some buyers really love being in major metroplexes and they only want to see 500,000 people. Other people say, I don't care where it is. I can I can raise the rates just as much in a secondary tertiary market from a percentage standpoint, and I'm getting a little bit of a discount on the purchase price. And so, I mean, across the board, we are seeing it very competitive, and there's really not a ton of markets that aren't. I mean, with how the asset has continued to grow, the word's getting out there, and there's just even more people out there that want to go and buy. And so someone that's local and in a tertiary market is willing to go out there and start kind of accumulating assets and buying things up, whereas the larger operators are starting to come into some of those secondary and tertiary markets.
Are there any self-storages that you would say steer clear of? I'm talking about, there's people out there like you can put a self-storage facility anywhere and you're going to lease it up. Are there areas where you would say that is just not the case?
Yes. I mean, so there's a lot of studies that have been put together. Your national average is what they say is 7 to 9 square foot per person in a 135 mile radius is your national average. And we see it, I think, statewide. It's pretty much the same here in Texas. And so what we talk with a lot of buyers on and what we kind of advertise are those demographic information that's out there. We've sold things that show 150 square feet per person in a 135 mile radius. And so you got to take a lot into account when you're looking at those. One, what is it that they're storing? If people are storing boat and RVs under covers, their square foot per person is going to be a lot larger. If it's something in a more dense area that has HOAs, I mean, people need a lot more space to store things. If you're in a more rural area, you probably can't push the numbers too hard. So it's a give and take. Honestly, the biggest thing that I always kind of coach people on when we're talking with them, and we talk with developers all the time, and the things that you want to look for is, do your market research. Are facilities full? I can honestly say very few facilities are below that 90% stabilized right now. I mean, you find them every once in a while, and generally it is some type of mismanagement going on. People have kind of neglected the asset or just said, hey, I've owned this for 15 years. It's paid off. And if I'm 70% full, the cash flow is still pretty good. You can still be grossing 20 grand a month with no debt payment. And in the end, they're just like, yeah, getting from 70 to 90, I just don't need to work for it. And so to get to your question of, are there things to steer clear of? I'd say it's market to market. You really just got to do your market research. Look at other facilities is probably the biggest indicator on what they're doing. We have one on market right now that was below that 90% stabilized. And I was talking with certain buyers and they said, yeah, we're not interested in it. The square foot's too high. It's in a college town. It's a little bit more rural. I talked to the buyers today and they said, man, we've done our research and we talked to everybody in the area and everyone is 95%. And so they didn't scare them away. And so that's the biggest thing I say is just do your research, get out there, talk with other owners. And generally everyone's pretty easy to talk to and willing to share information on that.
But it seems like the purchase price ought to be relative to how full it is. It just seems like if one is 70% full and it's priced for that would be an opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of a play on in place versus pro forma caps and with storage facilities and kind of the management side of it. You see it across all different assets, but the value add type is something that you definitely don't get the full capitalized value on it if you're under managing it, but there's a market out there that people are willing to pay a premium for an asset that's in place that is already cash flowing, that they can come in and say, I can get that. I can squeeze that last 20, 25% of occupancy out of it. And then there's also rate increases and things that are relatively easy to manage up to and provide that value that you can then give the current owner, hey, yeah, you do get a little bit of a premium for this, but you're not getting all the upside.
In your industry, is there a lot of operators buying with the intent of flipping it in a few years?
Yes, yeah, so I would say there's the larger groups do a buy hold where they're just buying for the cash flows. But we have a lot of the groups that are purchasing from us are groups that their goal is build up a portfolio and then flip it over to a REIT or one of those larger operators that is one of the buy and holds. And so generally the groups that we are selling to are those ones that have found their niche in the management side, that they can take some of these mom and pops, operate them up, get them cash flowing and operating well, and then they will roll off the portfolio. And that's what they're providing, is a larger portfolio to roll off and sell off to a larger group.
It seems like self-storage has been a hot topic over the past, I want to say 15 years is, I from what I've read, it started getting quite popular. And, there's been a lot of competition in the market. Is it still really competitive? Is it super saturated? Is there still a lot of room for people to get into it?
Talking with Charlie, I mean, when I first came in, I was like, I just don't understand how there's always somebody that's going to buy these up. He's like, it's how the market works. He's like, that's the beauty of the free market. And so we've definitely seen more people coming in. I mean, we have new things under contract right now, people that hadn't been in storage before, and this is their first foray into it. And so it just continues to grow. And it's why we're also starting to get into multifamily and manufactured housing, is because we're finding that a lot of those owners currently have a desire to be in storage as well, or we're just seeing what we're cross-pollinating between them. We'll see it once we have more multifamily stuff coming to market or more manufactured housing coming to market. We'll see those buyer pools start crossing over a little bit and just expanding who's coming into it. And so I would say it is competitive. I mean, you just never know who's motivated at the time. If it's a 1031 buyer, if it's someone that is syndicating deals and they just need they need to do a deal because they've got a bunch of money that they're looking to place and they haven't earned their fee in a little bit. And so it's definitely competitive. You just never know who's out there that's ready to purchase, and there's just more groups coming in, I would say.
So are you just focused on self-storage, or are you doing any of the multifamily and mobile home parks as well?
So I just do the self-storage side for Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, and Colorado. That was kind of the big selling point, and one of the reasons that I didn't want to get into brokerage. A lot of these brokerage shops kind of cross over, and you always hear these stories of people kind of infighting in the office over assets that people had or at one point or another had a relationship. And so we're very segmented by asset classes and area. And so I do storage. We've got a guy that's doing manufactured housing right now across our areas. We're bringing on another broker that will be doing the manufactured housing. We'll split that into 2 territories. And so we just kind of stay in our lanes, and we've got owners that have both. And so at some point, if they sell storage and they want to hold their manufactured housing or vice versa, we just provide that internal referral. And honestly, it's one of the things that you kind of learn as you get older is specialization is pretty key. You can definitely talk a lot more in depth on storage since I'm in it and talking with buyers daily. I don't know if I could talk to enough manufactured housing owners and people to learn enough about it, because it's a very nuanced asset in and of itself. And then multifamily as well, that's a whole nother beast.
So Calvin, what advice would you give anyone who's looking to get into self-storage investing?
I'd say the number one thing is underwrite as many deals as you can. Get out there, just start looking at them, make some good relationships with brokers, owners. You just got to get out there and network and find other people that are willing to kind of help you out. There's a ton of resources out there. It's interesting talking with some people in the industry that are all self-taught, and you can find them on Twitter and LinkedIn and TikTok and all the different social media networks of how they've gotten into storage, and then they continue to help promote other people getting into it. And I mean, there's mastermind classes and there's a bunch of coaching and classes you can take. Those are all great. I've heard great things about them, but honestly, it's a lot of storage. And the beauty of it is that you can kind of self-teach yourself on how to look at deals. And then the other piece of it is just having the resources to kind of go out and buy them. Whether it's buying in your backyard or being able to go out and raise money to syndicate deals. For a new owner, I would say it just depends on what your level of risk is. But the biggest thing is just looking at as many as you can and getting feedback from it. So, I mean, I've done it where some guys, they're just getting into it and they say, hey, I like that deal that you had under contract right now. Is that something that I can look at? And I'll give them the OM, and they can go through and they underwrite it. And we've had a conversation after, and they said, hey, here's where I was at. And it's interesting because I can see both sides of it now, because we underwrite it one way. We talk with the buyers, and I learn a little bit about how they're doing it. And so they can get some real-time feedback on would they have been competitive, or where is the market at, and this is where I need to be. And so it's just get as much feedback and reps as you can is my encouragement to people, and just get out there and look at deals.
Okay, so you, through your company, buys and sells and consults. Is that correct?
Yeah, so investment sales. So what we work with is we are sell-side brokers. We don't work on the buy side. Generally, in the storage space, there's not many buy-side brokers out there, and so we work on the sell-side brokerage, and always willing to help consult people. A lot of times, even with our sellers, it's a lot of ideas bouncing off the wall and talking people off the cliff, or saying, hey, you're doing great, it's operating well, it's just we can't get to that number that you want to be at this time, for no fault of your own. It's just where market conditions are. And so, yeah, we consider ourselves consultants in a way. Sometimes we're therapists as well, but it's just talking with owners, and that's really what we do on both the sell and buy side. So
how can our viewers get in touch with you, Colin, if they have questions or want to seek your services?
Yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody. The best way is just reach out to me on my cell, which is 401-465-1829. Or you can reach me, shoot me an email at CKnight, which is CKNIGHT @hopebrothers.com. And happy to talk with new people, talk with people that are already in the space. Just it's always fun getting out there and networking. So, we go to the conferences, try to hit a conference a year, try to get out to some of the executive conferences and just networking. And it's always more to learn in the industry. It's always an evolving change in the industry. So it's something that, talking with people every day, it's really our job. So,
well, thank you, Colin Knight, highly educated man, multi-talented sports stud. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with our audience, and thank you, folks, for listening to this episode of the Passive Income Power Podcast. Let us help you find your passive income superpower.
Thank you for watching the Passive Income Power Podcast. We hope you gained wealth building insights. I will ask you to do 3 things to help us serve you best. Go to our website at 2dinvestments.com, click on Investors Club, and fill out the basic information to have timely access to new offerings. 2, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And 3, feel free to set up a call with Doug or Mickey through our website. We would love to help you find your personal superpower.